Welcome to Red Rambling. In today's video, I'm going to give you my personal top 10 movies to watch while you're high. Well, kind of. This video is actually going to be split into two top 5 lists to give you a total of 10 movies. The reason for this is because I want to give you 5 movies that are actual weed movies, movies about people smoking weed that are made to be watched by people smoking weed, stoner movies. And I also want to give you 5 movies that aren't necessarily weed movies or stoner movies, but that are definitely more fun to watch when you are stoned. Whether that be due to trippy animation, a stoner's sense of humor, philosophy that'll really get you thinking, or all of the above. I'll also give you a smoking game for each movie on the list. Without further ado, let's jump into the weed movies first. Coming in at number 5, we have Evil Bong. So this movie is actually a piece of shit, but with a title like that, you just have to check it out. This movie was produced by Full Moon Features, the same producers as Puppet Master, but as low budget as their other work is, you can still tell that significantly less time and money was spent on this movie than on something like Demonic Toys, which actually does have a fun aesthetic to it. This movie, however, has zero atmosphere whatsoever and takes place entirely in a studio apartment, aside from a handful of scenes that take place in an evil strip club, because this movie is fucking weird. Basically, this walking L named Alistair moves into an apartment with 3 dudes that he's never met before, named Larnell, Bachman, and Brett. They're all supposed to be broke dudes in their early 20s, but 1 or 2 of these guys are definitely pushing 30. Being that they're all broken in their early 20s, there's no individual rooms, it's a studio apartment, and they all sleep on mattresses on the floor, which is the most realistic thing in this whole fucking movie. One day, Bachman orders a bong in the mail that turns out to be possessed by an evil spirit that will suck your soul and body into a demonic strip club world if you dare to take a hit from it. This is one of the cheapest and most ridiculous movies I've watched in a fat minute, but I'm positive that if you get a group of friends to watch this with you right after smoking or during the sesh, you'll all be laughing your asses off watching this. Take a hit every time Bachman says monkey. Coming in at number 4, we have Mac and Devin Go to High School. I've talked about this one before in previous videos, and I've probably mentioned at some point that this movie isn't very good, and while that is true, when you've got a couple of friends with you and you're passing a bong or a joint around as you're watching this, you'll have a great time. It's a stoner comedy. The movie stars Snoop Dogg and Wiz Khalifa as Mac, the school stoner / super senior, and Devin, the school nerd who never takes risks and spends all of his time worrying about the future. The two have nothing in common and don't really get along that well, but eventually are forced to work on a school project together. This movie actually has a few genuinely hilarious raunchy jokes, some fun visual gags like Mac smoking a 2-foot-long joint, and as I'm sure you can guess, a lot of the soundtrack for this is absolute fucking fire. The movie turns into a music video every so often, and you get some great stoner songs from Snoop and Wiz, such as the hit Young, Wild, and Free, which was every stoner's anthem during my first 2 years of high school. When you're sober, this movie will seem like a pointless parade of nonsense and weed jokes, but if you're baked, it's a guaranteed fun time. This movie actually comes with its own smoking game right at the beginning. It's a bit of an extreme one, but who am I to argue with Slow Burn the talking joint? Take a hit every time there's a character on screen either walking, talking, or breathing. Yeah, this seems more like a fucking try not to green out challenge than anything. In 3rd place is The Big Lebowski. This is probably the best movie on this half of the list, but it's at number 3 because it's not that much of a weed movie. While the main character is a stoner and the movie is full of stoner humor, the movie doesn't really have a big focus on weed itself in any way, and is more of a comedy that anybody can watch at any time. The Big Lebowski stars Jeff Bridges as the Dude, a middle-aged stoner who enjoys nothing more than the simplicity of his life. He lives in a small apartment and spends most of his time bowling with his best friends, played by John Goodman and Steve Buscemi, and of course, smoking weed. It's unclear what he really does for a living, but regardless, the dude gets by in life and is perfectly happy staying in his routine forever. All of this changes for him when he gets thrown into a mystery as a result of his real name, Jeff Lebowski, being the same as a very wealthy man whose wife has just been kidnapped. This movie is absolutely hilarious, and Jeff Bridges as the Dude is one of my favorite characters in any media. His laid-back attitude in this movie results in some really funny line deliveries and a character who's just really relaxing to watch. It's like seeing Bob Ross get thrown into a crime drama. Also, this is pretty well known by now, but it should be noted that this character is the inspiration behind an entire religion called the Church of the Latter-day Dude, or more commonly known as Dudism. It has over 800,000 followers, as in believers, like not on Twitter. and this makes it the slowest growing religion in the world, but I still feel like that's way more followers than you would expect it to have. Overall, this movie goes hard whether you smoke weed or not, but it's definitely a better time when you're stoned. Take a hit every time John Goodman swears. Next up in second place we have Reincarnated, so this one also might be cheating a bit, but I don't really think it is. Reincarnated is a 2012 documentary about Snoop Dogg during his Snoop Lion era that was made to promote his 2013 album of the same name. For anyone who doesn't know, this was a time when famous rapper Snoop Dogg was feeling tired of the hip-hop scene for reasons that become very clear when watching the movie. Going through a bit of a midlife crisis, everyone's favorite stoner decided to get in touch with his ancestry and fly to Jamaica to record a reggae album. While he was in Jamaica, he spent a lot of time hanging out with Bunny Wailer, a legend in the reggae scene who had a large hand in helping Bob Marley really take off, and he's the one that gave Snoop the nickname Snoop Lion, which he would release his album under. He also met some local artists who would help him on the project and would eventually even join Rastafarianism. The movie also includes scenes of Snoop going on a hike to find some of the best naturally grown weed, and gifting Bunny Wailer with some California Kush. There's also a scene where one of his friends is oven baking his blunts. While this isn't specifically a weed movie, it does have a lot of weed in it, and a lot of conversations about it because, well, it's fucking Snoop Dogg in fucking Jamaica. This movie is a lot of fun to watch because of Snoop's charisma, the fact that the story is genuinely interesting to watch unfold, and the fact that it features some amazing music from possibly my favorite album that Snoop has ever made. And I'm saying that as somebody who is a much bigger fan of hip-hop than of reggae. The music is just that good. Also, I failed to remember this album when I was making my high music video, or it probably would have been number 1 or 2, but 3 songs from this album have since been added into that playlist. The movie also has some genuinely heartfelt and tear-jerking moments, as it deals a lot with the loss of loved ones. The scene where they're talking about the making of the song Ashtrays and Heartbreaks is genuinely sad to watch. Like The Big Lebowski, you don't really need to be high to enjoy this movie like you would for Evil Bong or Mac and Devin, but more so than The Big Lebowski, being high for this movie definitely makes it a more fulfilling experience, as the movie features a lot of great music, has a lot of Jamaican and Rastafarian culture in it, and stars the most famous stoner on this fucking planet. Take a hit every time somebody in the movie does. At number 1 for this half of the list, we have Cheech and Chong, Up in Smoke. I don't really feel like this one needs a ton of explanation. It's Cheech and fucking Chong in their first movie together. This had to get the number 1 spot. There's just no other option. Cheech and Chong are the most famous stoner duo in cinema. They were here before Wayne and Garth, or Bill and Ted, or Jay and Silent Bob, or Harold and Kumar, or Mac and Devin. They are the OG movie stoners. Tommy Chong and Cheech Marin are both great in this and work off of each other perfectly, but Tommy Chong especially is just hilarious. Tommy Chong plays Anthony Stoner, a lazy pothead who dreams of being a musician. When he crosses paths with Pedro, played by Cheech Marin, the two quickly hit it off before being arrested for possession of marijuana. To say anything more than that would be to give too much away. This movie is mandatory viewing for anyone who wants to check out stoner cinema. I think that this movie and its sequels and all of the movies that they inspired really had a big hand in normalizing the use in marijuana in North American culture, and I have to give Cheech and Chong a big round of applause for that, as well as the number 1 spot as far as weed movies go. Take a hit every time Tommy Chong says man. Now it's time to move on to the second half of this list, the movies that aren't really stoner movies, but you'll definitely enjoy them a lot more if you are a stoner. And another thing with these movies is that a lot of them probably work really well if you're on shrooms too, because of trippy animation and sick music. At number 5 we have Tron and Tron Legacy. Yeah, I'm putting both of them in the number 5 spot, which means that Jeff Bridges gets to be on this list for 3 movies, and the reason that both films get the number 5 spot is because I think the first Tron is the one that has the better aesthetic and visuals with all these bright neon colors and grand backlit backgrounds. However, I'm not sure how easy this movie will be to follow if you're stoned. For me, when I smoke weed and watch something, I either get super focused on it and pay way more attention than I normally would, or I can't pay attention worth shit and I don't know what's going on and I get confused and frustrated and just end up watching YouTube videos instead. And this movie specifically is already one that I had to watch more than once to fully catch everything that was going on and understand it well, so I wonder how well that would work stoned. The sequel, on the other hand, still has a very unique visual style, an amazing soundtrack by Daft Punk, and a story that's much easier to follow upon your first viewing. Both movies are about characters who get sucked into a digital universe where they have to go on a quest to get home, while a villain tries to stop them so he can take over. Both films have some religious metaphors too, as the digital humans are actually programs who call computer users in our world users, and the users are seen as gods to the programs as they created them and command them, and I think that's a really cool concept. The first movie definitely has more visual flair to it with the colors that really pop, but the second movie has better action and more relatable characters. I highly recommend both of these films to sci-fi fans and stoners alike. Take a hit anytime someone says the words user and program. In fourth place, we have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This movie has some sick animation, an amazing score by Daniel Pemberton, and a great soundtrack by Metro Boomin, fantastic action sequences, bright popping colors, and a story that feels grand and epic. Me and my friends saw this in theaters, and two of us went outside and hit the dab pen a bunch during the first 15 minutes, and then went back in, and this movie just absolutely blew us away. The sound design, the animation, the voice acting, the fight scenes, the characters, everything about this movie just falls perfectly into place when you're sober, let alone when you're baked, and feel a lot more engaged with audible and visual stimulation. With the release date of the third film getting pushed further and further away all the time, it's important to give as much love to this franchise as possible. I don't think I have to give much of an explanation about what this movie is. It's Spider-Man, everyone knows who Spider-Man is, and most people know what this movie is about, especially anybody who would be interested in content on my channel. But I'll say that it's about Miles Morales as Spider-Man on a second theatrical outing, and it's even better than the first one, and this movie is just fucking sick, bro. It looks cool as fuck, it sounds cool as fuck, the action is cool as fuck, the characters are cool as fuck, the story is genuinely cool as fuck. Everything about this movie is cool as fuck. Go see this cool as fuck movie. Watch it right now. Watch it high, watch it sober. I don't give a shit. But if you do watch it high, make sure to take a hit every time somebody says Spider-Man. Coming in at number 3, we have Alice in Wonderland. This is in my top 5 Disney movies, by the way. Alice is such a kind and likable character. She isn't looking for any of the trouble that she's getting into. She just fell down a hole and now she wants to get home. This is one of Disney's trippiest movies, and it's definitely no accident. There's just a lot of drug references in this movie that slip over your head when you're a kid. On top of that, the animation is amazing, the songs are great and memorable, and the movie does a great job moving you from bizarre situation to possibly philosophical conversations, and then back to bizarre situations, while still feeling like it's telling one solid story, despite the fact that there hardly is a story at all. Alice meets all sorts of strange and classic characters like the Mad Hatter, the Cheshire Cat, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, the Queen of Hearts, any number of classic characters that you recognize from this tale. Take a hit anytime Alice says goodness or rabbit, and anytime the Hatter says tea, and anytime the Queen of Hearts yells. In second place is Fantasia, which is my number 1 favorite Disney movie. As much as I love a movie with a good story, I love Fantasia because of its lack of story. Well, lack of overarching story anyways. Fantasia is a movie that tells many stories. This is more of an art project than a feature film. Disney animators were told to listen to classical music and animate how it made them feel, and the result is a mesmerizing masterpiece of classical music and some of the best animation Disney has ever put out. Some songs are accompanied by great visual storytelling, while others are accompanied by beautiful abstract visual art. Certain pieces are drenched in symbolic imagery that'll have your stoned monkey brain saying, "Whoa, that's deep." And while I could understand if some people find this film boring, I personally love it, and I think that if you just turn the lights off, smoke a couple bowls, and let yourself get consumed by the music and animation, you'll have a really nice, relaxed high watching this. Me and one of my best friends watched this shit on shrooms, and it was one of the best experiences I've had doing shrooms with someone instead of just doing it myself, as I typically do have a better time doing a high dose alone than a low to medium dose with friends, as I made clear in a fucking previous video. But this was one of like the best doing shrooms with someone else experiences that I ever had. There's a segment that depicts life on Earth from the forming of the planet to the extinction of the dinosaurs, and we were extremely invested. I can't even come up with a good smoking game for this movie because it's segments and it's pretty animation. It's not really a smoking game kind of movie, so I'll just say take 2 hits at the beginning of each segment. At number 1, we have Yellow Submarine. This is a movie made by people on drugs, meant to be seen by people on drugs, yet still not technically a weed movie. In this musical adventure, the Beatles go on a magical adventure in their yellow submarine to a place called Pepperland together. Pepperland is under attack by villains that are straight up called blue meanies, yes, like the mushrooms. The art style of this movie allows for a lot of bizarre and colorful images that are just burned into my brain forever. Throw in the laid-back voice acting and beautiful musical talents of John, Paul, George, and Ringo, and you end up with a highly delightful, relaxing, and trippy as fuck fantasy adventure. I watched this with a couple of my friends when I was 19, and it was about midnight, and we'd been passing around joints and pens since like 8 p.m. We were all baffled by what we were watching, and for days after we were singing, "We all live in a yellow submarine." This is probably the trippiest movie I've ever seen. Take a hit every time there's a song, and every time you think to yourself, what the fuck? That's all for my list, but before you go, I'd like to name some honorable mentions that didn't quite make the cut. Pink Floyd's The Wall because, while it is very trippy, it can also come off as dull and confusing at times, and really the best parts are the animated segments, which don't happen often enough for my liking. Raggedy Ann and Andy, this one almost made the cut because it is trippier than Alice in Wonderland, but it didn't quite make it because it's not quite as good as Alice in Wonderland. Fantasia 2000 is good, but the first one is better, and Dazed and Confused many people love, but I've just never seen. Brain Damage was close to making it, as it has some great bizarre imagery, but I figured one cheesy horror movie with Evil Bong was enough. That's all for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and comment your favorite movie to watch when you're baked. Have a great day.